A few weeks ago, an update was added to The Last of Us Part 2 which gave players the option to play the entire game in chronological order. I liked this game when it first came out, experiencing it and making my review for it was a lockdown highlight, but while I don't get thinking it's irredeemably terrible, I also don't get thinking it's a masterpiece that's better than the first. I mean, really? And I've never gotten the itch to revisit it until this update, which, if nothing else, is a really cool bonus to add for free. I was quite happy to spend the 10 quid upgrading to the PS5 version. And on top of that, I loved playing through the lost levels with the commentary from the developers about what these sequences would accomplish and why they were cut. I want more games to implement this as an unlockable, and the no return mode is pretty solid from what I've played of it, although it's kind of weird that this of all games has an enemy wave mode. But anyway, playing the chronological mode was a very interesting experience I'm eager to share my thoughts on. How does the narrative play, putting all its cards on the table early doors? Is the gameplay affected by the structure change? And generally speaking, how did Part 2 stack up on a replay? Well, let's get into it. To give a rough summary of how this shakes up the structure, the segue into the second half of the original version opens this mode. One of the very last scenes plays early on, and the 3 days in Seattle are experienced concurrently instead of Abby's coming after Ellie's. I went in with the thought that the chronology would convey how close the pair were to each other at certain points, like Abby would still be in the hospital when Ellie arrived, but that's not really how it works, which from a practical standpoint does make sense. And outside of a couple odd bits where it switches to Ellie for a really quick cutscene and goes straight back to Abby, and going through the moment the perspectives converge twice in quick succession, the reshuffling generally feels seamless, and it's very interesting to see the context change. Early on, I tried to imagine I was experiencing this story for the first time and what that might feel like, and in doing so, I really like the idea of opening on this new character. It throws you for a loop, there's a bit of mystery to it, and seeing Abby's account of the hospital incident immediately followed by Joel's lends the following proceedings a bit of intrigue and suspense for where it could lead. The original version is very reliant on the element of surprise, which is partly why I haven't replayed it until now, so I quite liked seeing more directly the way the perspectives weave into each other and feeling more like I was catching up with Joel and Ellie in what now form the opening hours without the tragic baggage. Although it does mean Joel's presence doesn't loom over the experience as much, which is a problem, and Abby's flashbacks suffer being played in this manner. For one, doing all these scenes back to back makes the formula of them mainly being character bonding with a little bit of plot development at the end very noticeable, but it highlights how little Abby's torment is actually explored, especially compared to Ellie. Going after Joel feels less like an all-consuming obsession and more like a quick side hustle in her chats with Owen. And with the build-up in her journey being seen this way, it's very unsatisfying to have her just come across Joel as happenstance amid a contrived horde. Then, without the initial shock value, having Joel and Tommy help her before she kills Joel in such a brutal manner just left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't hate Abby as a character, she's alright, but the execution of Joel's execution makes it harder to fully sympathize with her, especially as that winds up feeling like a footnote in her overall story. Going back and forth between Ellie and Abby's 3 days in Seattle exemplifies the disconnect between their two stories, which continues to be one of my biggest issues with the game. If the new characters were as well drawn as those in the first, maybe I wouldn't mind as much, but they're just not as compelling as the likes of Tess, Bill, Henry, and Sam, although there are some very fun interactions. Mostly, there's just too much young adult melodrama, and the parallels between Joel and Ellie and Abby and Lev get a bit obvious. And Abby's humanization is solely for the player's benefit. Ellie doesn't get to have that experience, and her arc is basically unimpacted by it, which really detracts from the ending. I mean, on a replay, I'm not particularly keen on the final stretch in general, but compared to the first game, where even if you disagreed with Joel's decision at the end, you understood why he did it, I do not get the motivation for freeing then sparing Abby. It was kind of frustrating going all the way there without Ellie just shooting Abby while she was tied up. But honestly, how effectively hollow would that have felt if she got her revenge as easy as that? No grand final encounter or anything. But anyway, then it bugged me that Ellie had all her resources on the boat like a friggin' axe, yet doesn't use any of them in the fight. I get why from a gameplay standpoint, but I don't think the game sets up Ellie's change of heart very well at all. The very last moments would be the exact same whether Abby lived or died. Maybe that's the point, but it's almost funny how completely miserable the ending is without the last flashback. But a lot of these points aren't exclusive to the chronological mode. I probably would have noticed these on a normal replay anyway, so let's get back to the topic at hand and talk gameplay. There's a bit of a wait to get to the action, having to do all the flashbacks in one go, but I didn't find that bothersome. It doesn't take as long as I thought it would, and the exploration is engaging enough, and to be fully in the thick of the experience without those deviations later or the reset in resources and upgrades might make for the more satisfying gameplay experience. The pacing issues are still there, the back half of Abby's day one feels like it goes on for bloody ever, and the fear of missing out on items can elongate things with how many areas there are. But overall, I still love how this thing plays. Exploring the environments for collectibles and resources remains incredibly absorbing. I was definitely much better stocked this playthrough, and the action continues to thrill. I love using the silenced pistol, and the versatility of weaving between stealthy play, shootouts, or an all-out escape keeps you on your toes in a very organic way. And for as many issues as I do have with this game overall, it was great to be reminded of how high its high points are. The museum sequence takes me right back to the magic of the relationship from the first game. For world building and horror, the Ground Zero level is one of the series' highlights. I loved taking the time to see all that mini open world section had to offer, including the very moving take on me scene I completely missed my first time through. The music, sound, voice acting, especially from Ashley Johnson, and the visuals are all stellar. This is one of the best photo mode games for sure. So for as ready as I was to be finished with this by the end, I did mostly have a very good time with this chronological mode. It's not a total game changer for those who didn't like the original structure, but personally speaking, I did find the alternate perspective had a better sense of momentum. And when it comes down to it, to be able to have such a fresh experience with a game I've already played is fantastic.